Joshin. I'm Josh Shippensteel.
And I'm Josh Horton.
And today we're going to preview Week 5 in college football. Josh, take it away.
First, we'll go with Tennessee and LSU. Struggling Jordan Jefferson has thrown 2 touchdowns and 4 interceptions this season. He's going to look to get back on track against the struggling Tennessee team at just 2-2. And Tennessee program has been just in a real mess. Everything happened with Lane Kiffin, and I just really think that LSU is going to go away with an easy victory here. How about you, Josh?
Well, the game's in LSU down in Baton Rouge. I think it's going to be a pretty easy game. Ever since Lane Kiffin, the school has kind of fallen apart. Tennessee still 2-2 records, can still contend in the SEC. It's a really tough conference, but we'll have to see what happens down the road. But this is going to be Tennessee's probably real good first test within the SEC, finally kicking off conference play. It's going to be a good game, but I think LSU, I agree with you. I think they'll take it pretty easily.
Yeah.
Okay. So now we're going to move on to Pac-10 battle in Washington at USC, game in the Coliseum. Matt Barkley on the bench in Seattle last year in this game. USC lost 16-13 in that game just a week after beating Ohio State. So that was a pretty big shocker last year in 2009. This is USC's toughest test yet. Lane Kiffin worked along Washington's head coach Steve Sarkisian for 5 years under Pete Carroll at USC. Kiffin is actually the first coach in USC history since 1951 to start the season 4-0 in his first season at USC. Barkley had 4 picks in his last 2 games. He's going to look to turn it around. He's going to explore all of his options this week, both in the wide receiving core and in the running backs to the outside. He's going to look to pass to pretty much anyone on the field. Running game's been unstoppable, so look for USC to be a pretty big threat this week, both in the air and on the run. They're going to do both all day. Defense is kind of shaky so far. They've given up a good bit of points, given up a lot of yards, and defensive end Wes Horton is uncertain to play at all. So it looks like the defense might have to step it up, especially against the invincible Jake Locker. Last game Washington had was September 18th, 2 weeks ago. Locker was 4 for 20 with 70 yards against Nebraska, and they lost 56-21. So he really needs to turn it around this week against a tough USC team. Locker remains confident, even though it was kind of tough the last week against Big 12 frontrunner Nebraska, besides Oklahoma, of course. Not season so far everyone was expecting for Jake Locker, but of course he'll still be a Heisman contender, great quarterback. And Washington doesn't have the best defense either, so they really need to step up big time against Matt Barkley, who's looking to have a killing this week in the air.
Absolutely. They really have to step up. I just think that USC is going to be a little too much for Washington. Obviously, I'm pretty impressed with this USC team. They really have nothing to play for. They can't go to a bowl game.
Just playing to knock everybody off.
Pete Carroll, screws up the program and then pulls for Seattle. What a guy. But now we'll go to Alabama, where Florida will take on the Alabama Roll Tide Roll, if you will. And both teams 4-0 thus far, and Brantley has been a nice replacement for Tim Tebow thus far. But Tim Tebow, an unreplaceable guy, as we've talked about last week. Mm-hmm. But I think this is definitely the best defense he's going to face all season, and we should see how he does against a good defense. I just think that Bama's going to be too much with Mark Ingram and Greg McElroy. Is going to have a big game, I think, through the air. What do you think, man?
Best game we've seen so far this season. Definitely the best game in the SEC that's going to be played all season, and we have it here in Week 5.
Yeah.
I don't even care about the SEC championship, even though this might end up to be the same thing. It's still best game we've seen so far this year. Florida looked real impressive against Kentucky last week.
Man, that was his upset prediction.
That was my upset prediction.
Everyone?
Wasn't even close. But Florida heard a lot of negative comments about their gameplay so far in the season, and I think they kind of picked it up against the Wildcats. So I believe Bama will win, like you say, but I think Florida's going to be right there with them till the end. I think it's going to be a tough test down in Tuscaloosa. It's going to be a fight to the end, and it's all going to come down to who's. I bet it comes down to whose offense plays better, and Brantley really needs to step up.
I honestly think what happened was Urban Meyer got a hold of our Just Josh in here on YouTube, and he played it in the locker room for his players and a little bit of motivation.
You got to get him fired up because I ripped him apart last week.
Yes, you did.
Well, now to move on to the next game, we have Notre Dame at Boston College this week. Notre Dame, 3 losses in a row. Same story the past few years. Looks like we're going to continue it in 2010. 2 of those 3 losses were in South Bend, so really not helping them much. Brian Kelly will try to pick up the pieces against Boston College. Nothing was working against Stanford. Nothing on the defense. Nothing in run, pass. Nothing working. Dane Chris has put up good numbers so far for a sophomore, but he needs to lead the team better. He has 1,155 yards this season and 8 touchdown passes, but he hasn't been able to lead the team. And a 1-3 record, I mean, that's not really showing much out of your quarterback. Armando Allen in the backfield, he's pretty successful on the ground, combining 300 yards so far this season. The defense is struggling, giving up 30 points in each of the last 2 games, so look for them to kind of step up against Boston College this week. It's not as strong of an offense as they've seen the past few weeks. So look at them to kind of better themselves a little bit this week, build their confidence up a little bit as they approach the next few weeks that are going to be pretty difficult. Annual matchup is, this annual matchup is crucial for the Irish to get the confidence back on their side, and I'm sure they're going to be hungry for a win here in New England. They need to get their fan support back on their side, because I got a good buddy out in Notre Dame, and he's losing confidence in them already. They're 4 games into the season.
Well, I can't really blame everybody there. There's nothing going on that's positive in Notre Dame right now. You're supposed to have that luck of the Irish, but I'm just not seeing it. It's just not lucky.
Historically a great program, and in the past decade, it's just gone down the drain.
Yes, it has. And there are a lot of fans around here that are Notre Dame fans, and they are not happy with the way this program is performing. And who can blame them? Who wants to watch on Saturday your team play and lose? Not me.
Yeah, everybody gets excited back home where I'm from, too. But Boston College coming off a shutout against Virginia Tech last week. I actually picked them to win that game, so really they
got one right, folks.
I'm just not very good at this show. They're coming off a shutout. They got shut out last week in Blacksburg. Or no, wait, I think that game was at Boston.
I think it was.
I'm not sure. But Virginia Tech has been the only test for Boston College so far this season. But Boston College didn't look that great against Weber State or Kent State either in their first 2 games. Not much of a test there either. They're pretty lucky the game's not in South Bend because I feel like Notre Dame's probably going to be a little more hungry than they are for this one. They need to get the tempo on their side right away because their offense suffers more than their defense. So they need to get an early lead. I know Notre Dame's famous for coming back late in the game and making it a close one, but Boston College needs to get right up there at the start and just kind of maintain a good lead for the whole game. Quarterback Dave Shinsky has thrown for only 529 yards and 4 touchdown passes this year. And to beat a Notre Dame team that's historically a great team, and they have a lot of great players, they're just kind of suffering in their record. You can't put up numbers like that and expect to beat Notre Dame.
No.
Running back Montel Harris has ran for 300 yards so far. He's not doing too bad. They kind of have to rely on him to kind of get the job done since Shinsky's not putting up the greatest numbers in the world. Defense only gave up 19 points to Virginia Tech, who's a very good offensive team but hasn't shown it so far this season. Tyrod Taylor kind of picked them apart a little bit, even though they only put up 19 points. Defense needs to stop both the run and the pass because Notre Dame's going to throw anything and everything at them just so they can make a bowl game at the end of December.
Yeah.
They're already looking to maybe just hang on to a 6-6 record, so they're really going to throw everything at them to get a W. And Notre Dame really needs this one because it's not going to get any easier. You've got Pitt, Navy, Utah, and USC still remaining on the schedule.
But hey, you know what? No matter how bad they do, they will still be on NBC.
That's very true. They're never going to lose that spot.
No, never. It doesn't matter if they don't join a conference. Why join a conference when you could just be on NBC all the time?
That's mainly why they stay there.
Yep. And now let's go to Penn State and Iowa. What a great matchup this is. This is always a good time of the year for Penn State fans. Yeah, right. Anyways, this is the year I think that Penn State actually turns it around and beats these pesky Iowa Hawkeyes. I think that it's always an interesting matchup when they collide, but in the previous years, Penn State has gone there undefeated and has left with a very, very, very